Good afternoon to our audience in Europe, the Middle East and Africa. Good morning to the Americas and good evening to the Asia-Pacific region. Welcome to our third session of Connecting Ports, the interactive talk show. We are very happy to be back here together with you, and thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Christina Prieser, and in my daily job as economics expert and as associate partner at HPC Hamburg Port Consulting, I support clients worldwide in increasing their competitiveness. Connecting Ports wants to be a talk show that interactively links ports, terminals and the hinterland, and most importantly, looks at different perspectives on our one focus topic. We broadcast live from the studio in Hamburg's historic warehouse district. Our motto is debating what matters. Since you, in front of the screens around the world, are interested in spending your valuable time with us, you certainly have an opinion on today's subject. So I'd like to encourage you to share your thoughts, questions and ideas on our topic by using the chat at any time during the event. We want to get a better understanding of what you think about one of the central questions of today, namely our focus topic, port automation, why automation projects can fail. Terminal automation is widely seen as a tool for increasing efficiency, and some people may even say throughput. However, after 30 years of this automation, only a limited number of terminals worldwide have engaged in automation projects. Today, we would like to discuss why this is the case and which are the points at which a project turns from being promising to a failure. Our session today focuses on the operations and project implementation aspects of automation, while the next Connecting Ports event will address related digitalization topics. So to take a deep dive into this matter, we are happy that we have three experienced guests with us today. So let me introduce our speakers who look at our topic from different perspectives. Pascal Brockmann is the Director of Operations at HHLA International. He will provide the view from the terminal operator's perspective on implementing automation. Thanks for joining us today. Dr. Lawrence Henesey, HPC's Vice President for North America and currently in Houston for the Port of the Future conference. From his experience, Lawrence brings in the views of an operator, a vendor and a lecturer on automation. So thanks, Lawrence, for being here with us.
Thank you.
And last but not least, as our studio guest, we welcome Dr. Nils Kemme, Managing Director at HPC, and he will share with us his thoughts from a global consulting perspective. So great to have you here, Nils.
Thank you.
Before we start talking with our guests, we have prepared a short video as introduction. Terminal operation, automation. The year is 2023. The first terminal to introduce automation was in the port of Rotterdam in 1993. The operator ECT pioneered the vision of using automated systems to move containers from the quay cranes to the container stack. Where are we 30 years later? So, Nils, can you give us a snapshot of the journey since then?
Well, a lot of things, of course, happened since then. First of all, we've seen a lot of technological progress, which led to a lot of new systems. new automation technologies becoming available. Now we have not only AGVs, but lift AGVs. We have automated stacking cranes, cantilever stacking cranes. We have automated RTGs. We have autostrats, vertical stacking like box bay becomes available, and many, many more. This happened on the technological side. But on the other side, and you said it yourself at the beginning, only very few terminals globally have so far decided for automation. So after ECT, for a long time, nothing happened. Then at the beginning of the 2000s, the CTA, Container Terminal Altenwerder here in Hamburg, followed thereafter. And since then, we've seen, let's say, 1, 2, 3 automated terminals per year. But in total, we probably have now 50, 60 terminals globally that have either an automated stacking yard or automated horizontal transport. So that's really not, let's say, a tremendous growth since 1993.
Right. And Lawrence, in your experience, what are the most promising and effective automation technologies currently available for ports, and why?
Attractive is at the gate using OCR. This is providing immense opportunities in obtaining data right there at the gate. The data on the container number itself, the driver, the license plate. This is very beneficial for terminals having that information as soon as possible when the container arrives, so that then the next task would be I want to say the assigning of the container into a stack, also with planning and scheduling. On the other side is on the STS cranes using OCR technology, where you can then identify a container coming out of the hold of the vessel. Also, safety can be improved in that by using an OCR. You can detect if the container is a 20-foot or a 40-foot. Because it is quite difficult for the STS drivers to detect containers when they are 130, 140 feet above the ship. So that's one area that we see a lot of promises. And of course, as well, over the years, primarily since 2007, has been the rapid development with stacking cranes. Primarily the one at Virginia, APMT Virginia in 2007. Since then, we've seen many terminals around the globe basically replicating that stacking crane operations.
Okay, thank you, Lawrence. Just for summary, Nils, can you give us an idea what the common motivations for pursuing automations project are?
Motivation. I think the main driver for automation till date is still cost savings, so efficiency gains. So you want to reduce workforce and handle more containers, more TEU per employee. That's the main driver. Next to that, but that really depends per terminal. Some are still thinking about capacity gains, but that depends on your starting point, from which system you're shifting to an automated system. Also, and that was also said in the beginning, some still believe in productivity gains through automation. I can assure that's hardly possible. Also, another driver or benefit is, of course, safety, work safety. You hardly see any accidents for automated terminals. And since you were specifically asking not about the benefits, but about the motivation, I would also say prestige is a motivation. So some terminals, although it doesn't make any sense from a purely business financial perspective, still go for it because they want to be an innovation leader.
Right, thank you very much. Quite extensive list, nevertheless, right? So Pascal, how can we ensure that automation improves operational efficiency and productivity while maintaining at the same time high levels of safety and security?
If we look at the different technologies, they are mostly dealing with one area of the terminal, and Lawrence has mentioned the gate OCR. That's pretty much a commodity these days. I would say. Same goes for automated stacking cranes or AGVs. So in themselves, you can pretty much design them and then optimize them. But I think if we look at the difference between automated terminals and manual terminals, in manual terminals you always have the person to heal any process deficiencies, and in an automated system you don't have that. So in order to make it safe in terms of work safety, of course, and it make it secure in terms of mostly cybersecurity, I guess, you would have to understand this as an integrated system. So you have to think beyond the technology, not just look at what kind of machine am I buying, but also how am I using it. So and this has to be at the beginning of the concept phase, not after deciding for which system to go, but in the very beginning, to say how is my terminal going to look like end to end, greenfield and brownfield alike, and then put safety in the middle of that, rather than trying to heal that afterwards. So I think there we got already the first of the potential breaking points of successful implementation of automation.
Thank you very much, Pascal. Just quickly jumping in here, please engage in the chat. So you have the chance during the complete event to write your questions and comments in there. We will take it up during the event and afterwards. Now, let's move on to the very practical issues. Which are the very first considerations to be addressed when looking at a terminal automation project? So, which are major green and red flags, Nils?
Whoa. I mean, major considerations at the beginning are, of course, first you need to decide whether automation makes sense at all. What's the right level of automation for a terminal? And if red flags, for example, if there is a very low salary level in a country, obviously the main driver, labor cost savings, doesn't have such a big impact, so it doesn't make a big sense here. Also, we've seen terminals where the local grid power supply is not that stable, and electricity is typically a main prerequisite for automating. So that's in that case then also a red flag, obviously. And then there are a lot of soft factors, which I wouldn't call red flags, but which have a lot of impact, such as what's the power of the union in that country or in that port. So what level of resistance are you expecting? Is the organization capable of doing change? Is the organization capable of or willing to take change? And many other aspects. And of course, is the funding there? Because automation is a lot more expensive than building a manual terminal. So, but this is not a red flag, really. Yeah.
Let's say it's concerns to be taken into consideration.
Exactly.
Okay, right. So coming to the operational point of view, so Pascal, you have started the project of introducing remote control terminal tractor units, as we recently read in the press. What was your motivation and how did you proceed there?
Yes, as Nils rightfully said, I also don't believe in automation for the sake of automation. So this famous one piece of automated terminal, please, and I pay at the checkout, that simply won't work. So usually what I would look at is, if I look at my process map of the terminal, I would look at processes with a high repetition rate and a low variance in the process. And then I find out that on different terminals, usually they can be very different depending on the commodities handled at the terminal. I can have maybe multi-purpose terminals, so we can also think beyond container. Exactly in our case, I looked at our RTG terminals, which have terminal tractors as the main horizontal transport technology. And we said, hey, they are driving from the yard to the waterside and back quite a few times a day. We believe that this can be achieved also in a somewhat automated way. We took here, and I think we get back to that point later, we took here the decision to start with remote operations to keep the complexity in the project a little bit lower. There are now a few cases of autonomous trucks coming up around the world in the port industry. I'm looking at Middle East and then Pacific regions. In Europe, the legislation requirements are a little bit more complex to tackle. So we decided for a little less complexity in the first step. And then we said, okay, also we will not cover the entire usage of a terminal tractor. So we're not looking so far at the driving to the CFS station or driving to the maintenance shed. We look at the core process that makes up 90% of the operational time, and we start automating there.
Okay, so I take it, or I wonder whether the issue of complexity was the only point of not just directly skipping the remote control option and going directly for autonomous trucks. Was there any other issue, or was it only the complexity?
It is also, of course, the issue that this is a rather innovative project. So at the moment, if I look in Europe, if I ask my supplier market, please provide me with autonomous tractors with safety approvals, then I don't really have a market. So we said we partner up with a company. In this case, a technical startup company, Fanride, who are heavily into the development of those algorithms. But so this is very much a development project that we did. And in my experience, if you designed projects that only are beneficial if you achieve the full scope that you're attending or that you're intending for, then you are very likely to fail. If you only gain in your OPEX and in your productivity, if you achieve 100%, then this can be a very bumpy road. So we said let's do something where we have to deploy 80% of the technology already. So we need the drive-by-wire interface, we need the sensors, we need the software stack, we need the remote operator stations that I will also need for an autonomous truck, because I always need the fail-safe switch of having a manual override. So we're deploying most of the technology already, but in a much easier field. So the target can be achieved much easier, and then we can build on that. And of course, the joint target that we have is autonomous driving in mixed traffic scenario. Remote operations is nice to have, and we gain something with it, but the target is of course autonomous.
Thanks, Pascal. Coming to a slightly different point, from your experience, Lawrence, which impact has the introduction of autonomous trucks on the terminal infrastructure as compared to remote control operation?
And challenge is that with autonomous, you have to have the lanes, the configurations, the yards already planned out. There's a lot of planning, also simulation taking place for the traffic management. And again, with automation, what has been, I think, a challenge is that trying to manage the expectations, because there has been many times with automation this high expectation that it was going to revolutionize the operations, going to improve the performance, but really it should be seen as evolutionary steps, small steps leading to having a improved performance. So from the automated trucks, automated AGVs that I was working with, this was a challenge, and then of course the integration. This is a very difficult and also challenging aspect when it comes to automation, because many of these systems, when they are thought out, planned, deployed, they're from companies that are small, medium size. There's a few large right now, and it's contracting as we speak with the large vendors. So this integration aspect makes it another challenge for companies to introduce their technologies. Coming back to the remote, this is I believe an easier technology, because you still have the man involved. And regarding with ports and terminals, we have seen over the years with automation, we don't get the high performance that we were expecting. We do have the cost savings, as Nils was mentioning, but when it comes to high performance, high performing container terminals, it has been the manned systems. But of course, that can be a challenge with unions, and also the operations are up and down. It's not steady, not I want to say always sustainable. But remote, this is where we see a lot of I want to say interest in this, especially with RTGs. As we speak, we see quite a few RTGs, RMGs being remote controlled, and I think this was pushed due to COVID. And that many of the operators around the world, they had to send their staff home, and they were operating the cranes from their kitchens and from their spare rooms.
Thanks, Lawrence. Very interesting insight. You addressed it already implicitly. Because when it comes to automation, it's not just robotics for operations, it's also very much about processes. So how important are optimized processes in achieving successful automation, and on which specific processes should the operator focus to ensure the maximum benefits are realized? Can you comment, Lawrence, on that one?
Was a professor by the name of Peter Drucker. And one of his quotes is that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So coming back to ports and terminals, is that what I've seen over the last 33 years is that every port is different. There are, even under the same operator group, you'll have management operating differently. And this is due to the lack of standards in our industry. We're getting better. There are steps being taken, for example, by TICS 4.0 to address some of these issues. But still, every port, every terminal, every automation, it's a project. It's a massive project, and it takes much, I want to say, support from various vendors, working with the operators as a partnership. Communication is very critical. We've seen over the years some mishaps. Big mistakes that cost millions due to lack of communication, not thinking of integration, and this has been, I want to say, experiences that we are learning from not to do. What we have, of course, is lessons learned that we are applying, and I see as overall over the last 30 years, it's been an evolution in terms of deploying automation in terminals. And we keep hearing about that terminals, only a small number are using automation. And to be fair, if you think about it, a terminal operator, he has 30, maybe 40 years to run a terminal. So in 30, 40 years, they need to make money. They need to achieve a high revenue for their shareholders. So if you look at the automation, these big terminals, there's a high level of capex that's involved, and that may at times put off some of the shareholders, and they may just want to go for a lower cost solution where they would have a higher capex over time, but they're just concerned that this high OPEX up front will put them off. So that's why you see the big terminals have invested in automation. And what is of interest right now, this is where Pascal and Nils are working on, is with the large number of medium-sized terminals. We have over 2,000 terminals that we could offer some solutions from automation.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Would you like to comment too, Nils?
Yeah, sure. I think the focus for me often is too much on the automated equipment here and the robotized sort of thinking when you talk about automation. There are a lot of options for process automation, actually. Either in the actual operations, so you still see a lot of paper handled by the dockers. Why not using some tablets there, then it's directly in the system? You avoid double typing, double inputs, you avoid the mistakes. It's simply more efficient. Also in the back office, a lot of work can be saved with process automation. I'm thinking about container administration, doing the bookings, correcting the bookings, Also in the billing department, there are a lot of options which now become possible with the with artificial intelligence, machine learning. You can do a lot in that area, and I think these are sort of will be low-hanging fruits, particularly for the small and mid-sized terminals in the future.
Okay, great. Surely interesting times ahead, I would say. So let's stay further on the specific project level and talk about possible reasons why implementing automation projects can fail. So automation has a lot to do with integration, which was already mentioned here by our guests. And given that the many sensors and interfaces, integration must be very well coordinated. So isn't implementation at the beginning of an automation project often an underestimated part? And how do you achieve cost-effective implementation? So Pascal, what's your view on that?
There's two on that. One I mentioned already earlier. Before you start automating one part of your terminal, think about the consequences for the other parts. And I've been in projects where I had one machine was supposed to talk to the other, and both one sent a message and the other one didn't receive, and both suppliers told me it was on the other end the problem. So think of your terminal as an integrated machine, and have a good integration concept. And Lawrence, you mentioned lack of standards in our industry. That is a gaping disadvantage that we have, and that I hope we can over the next years strongly get better there, because every little project is an integration project. Every time we reinvent the wheel on how machines should talk to each other, rather than defining this once and for all. So that's your step number one where you can fail. The other one is a little bit the make-believe problem. In the beginning, you sit down and map your processes, and usually you do that in an office with big walls, and you have the process maps on the walls, and you think of how your reality is, and you forget a little bit sometimes to go outside the door and go out in the field and ask the people how reality really is. And then when you implement based on what you have specified, and then you come to the reality and you realize that you have forgotten 20% and 20% more you have misinterpreted, and then you start in correcting that in never-ending and cost and time overrunning additional project work. So those are two big steps that I would do in the beginning of every automation process or project. First, look at how is that going to blend in with the rest of my terminal, and second, take a very deep look at how the reality really is. If you're talking brownfield, of course, greenfield, that's a different topic.
Yeah, thanks. So this kind of first step is an implementation and integration concept, right? So what are the most essential components here? And Lawrence, can you give us an insight in best practices and potential conceptual pitfalls?
The not having a clear objective. For example, just piggybacking on Pascal, is that with the processes, that this is not clearly outlined. And if you have a terminal that's employing processes that are not optimal, the idea of throwing automation, this is not a panacea. This is not going to solve what is inherently organizational challenges. So for sure, having clear objectives, project management is also important, paramount to the success of such a because this is a project. This is a project. So the project manager has a lot of responsibilities, communication with the various vendors, and this is also to be clear is that the vendors, they often are competing with each other in some areas, and so to get the vendors to work together, this is also almost like a conductor in an orchestra, trying to get them all to play the same tune together in harmony. So regarding to the steps would be project management, clear defined scope of work, the requirements have to be documented, specifications very clearly spelled out to all parties. So when you have this achieved, then you have seen in automation projects where they have been able to have a good success rate. A good example has been with the stacking cranes that we've seen with APMT in Virginia, with with a Khalifa port, also in Barcelona. That was quite good. They were able to achieve these timelines satisfactory.
Thanks, Lawrence. Very interesting to hear that. So in an ideal, fully automated world, one imagines an absolutely smooth operation. So, but in reality, automated systems meet semi-automated systems. So how does the interaction work here, and how is an efficient process flow guaranteed? Pascal, any thoughts on that from your experience?
I'm currently dreaming about the ideal world, and I think that is only achievable when there's no clients anymore. But jokes aside, there's always variance in whatever you do, so you may have your perfectly balanced system between your key crane and your AGV handover, and that might work absolutely smoothly, and then you have to do with unbalanced containers that are unevenly loaded, and all of a sudden you are outside of the thresholds of what that system can do. So there's the adversary conditions that you just cannot mitigate with automated technology, and in the end of the day, the manual override button is the most important feature in any automated system. You will never achieve, at least in my humble opinion, you will never achieve 100% smooth automated processes. You can aim at a high 90%, but you have to have a very good concept for the few percents that are left, so that they do not threaten the success of the entire automation. And that's then, how is the process flow guaranteed, you asked. I guess think about your exception handling quite well. The standards you will cover, and we're moving more and more to standards. I count AGVs and ASCs as standard technology, and you will be able to manage that. But think about that box that you thought was able to go into the ASC stack, and turns out not to be, because there's a hole in the roof or so. I think that's where you conquer the last percent of success.
Thanks, Pascal. I just get here a comment from the chat, which is also addressed maybe first of all to you, Pascal. So the comment is that you are right. The terminal becomes a system. Integration is key. What I miss is the stress on the fact that human resources and skills are too scarce, both on supplier and terminal side. So what do you think?
I think that's a plus and a con for automation. First of all, yes, we're experiencing as well for manual labor. We are facing lack of skilled workforce. So in some terminals we see that it's hard to find and retain truck drivers. So that's of course then an argument pro automation. But on the other hand, when you have an automated system, you also need highly skilled technicians, IT specialists to implement and maintain them, and also these are not really queuing up to work in a maritime terminal industry. So I guess yes, I can absolutely agree. It's true. It's a daily headache for us. But it is somewhat true in both cases. You need skilled people or specialist people on a manual terminal, and you need even more specialized people on an automated terminal.
Yeah.
If I may add to this, Pascal, what I often see is that in terminal automation projects, terminal operators rely a lot on external resources. They bring a lot freelancers or subcontractors in who are doing the actual automation project, running the automation project for you. Then the terminal is somehow up and running. You've come to a certain point where you say, please go off my bill. I don't want to pay the consultants anymore. And you missed to build up the capabilities in-house, and you're not capable of improving the system thereafter. So you need to qualify your people essentially upfront, or at least during the project, that you are sitting on top of your terminal automation project throughout the whole project, and specifically thereafter when it's in the continuous improvement part. Yeah, so the point also is that leads us to the factor of change management, right, within the company, so which cannot be underestimated.
So, Lawrence, do you have any take on that one?
Absolutely. With many ports and terminals, it's actually critical to consider the human element when working with automation, especially in certain parts of the world where you have the unions having a strong foothold, like you would see in the West Coast of the United States and parts of Australia, where as well the unions are very strong and vocal. So it's very important to have good communication, clarifying what are the changes and how to manage those changes for the stakeholders, so everybody is on the same page. There are no surprises. Inviting the unions into meetings, like yesterday, there was a session on port automation, and in my presentation there were a few members of the ILA, which is the union in the East Coast of the United States and here in the Gulf Coast. So they were in the presentation. They were very interested to know what automation is going to do for them, how it's going to affect their lives. So in a nutshell, with change management, this is a critical part, and sometimes it's overlooked, because this comes to another element, is that often the automation, actually primarily most of the automation projects, has been done by engineers. From an engineering perspective, and often with the engineering, we are forced to use the technology. I would rather see in the future that instead of we say automated, we should say smart solutions that are tailored, that are adapting to the environment around us. Because sometimes with the automated systems that we had deployed in the past, they weren't able to adapt to the changes. And that's where we've seen the poor performance, low container throughput, because of these systems. They were rigid. Of course, over the years, because we are learning, we are improving on the technologies. So we have seen autonomous vehicles, and hopefully with autonomous and with AI that was mentioned earlier, maybe we'll see where we have smart solutions, speaking, communicating with not only with the machines, but also supporting humans. Because I heard from Pascal, and that's true, is that for many operators, the challenge as well is for the dock workers and the staff to work with these systems that often are complicated. They're not easy to work with. You have to have, perhaps in some cases, some basic programming. And I think it'd be good to have systems that are scaled down, working with humans, supporting humans in the operations of terminals.
Thanks a lot, Lawrence. Coming to another aspect now, this is testing. Testing is a vital part of implementation of automation. So simulating a concept is quite easy, but testing it in real life seems a bit challenging. So what are the prerequisites for testing in a new automation concept? And what is to be considered when testing the automation hardware, Nils?
I would say there are basically three different areas where you can use or can usefully apply simulation when it comes to automation projects. First of all, of course, in the concept phase as a decision support tool, helping you to make the right design decision, taking the right automation system, designing your terminal right, deciding for the right equipment numbers. Unfortunately, I have to admit that many simulations, particularly when it comes to automated terminals, have been totally wrong in the past. We have a long history where productivities have highly been overestimated by simulations in the past. I can say, for example, for the CTA here in Hamburg, it has been predicted like mid-30 productivities have been predicted, and we all know what automation systems are capable nowadays. It's definitely not above 30 moves an hour. But simulation has improved in that area. But that's the first area where simulation can be applied, and that's something everyone is aware of, and where it's heavily used. What is not so often done is to use simulation as a support tool for the procurement process. Simulation can help you to specify a certain work program, for example, for stacking cranes. Bring a container from here to there, bring a container from there to there with exact coordinates, run that work program in a simulation, and then you have a productivity. put it in the contract with the OEM, specify this work program, and say, later, after commissioning, your cranes must be able to deliver this work program with that productivity, because in simulation, with your accelerations, etc., you should be capable of doing that. And this is what we want to see as a sort of a performance agreement, which can then be tested. Yeah? That's the second point for where simulation can be helpful. Last point actually is not simulation, you could rather say emulation or virtual commissioning. So when it actually comes close to the commissioning, you can either emulate the automated equipment for testing if your terminal IT system is ready. So you test your terminal IT system, the TOS, the equipment control, against an emulation of the equipment. Or the other way around, you can test the real equipment, the control, the SPS of the equipment against a simulated environment, so emulating the terminal operations basically. These are all options where simulation can be very helpful. As I said, the latter two ones I think are very, very promising and should be used a lot more in practice. That offers a lot of potential, really.
Thanks, Nils.
Lawrence wants to say.
Lawrence has got a question or a remark actually to that. Can we have him
Sorry.
online?
Piggyback on with Nils here, that what I find, and I've been doing research for 20 years on simulation, is that often we see simulation as a science. Really, I find over the years it's more of an art, because when you're doing the modeling, how you model the simulator, how do you model a container terminal? It has such a big impact on what the results would be, because still simulation is a black box. And that's why it's so important to have people that understand the operations, the processes, that have a clear view, like Pascal was saying, they go outside from their offices, go into the field to validate and verify. This is so important, because unfortunately with simulations, even today when I see publications in journals and articles, they're not credible because they have not been validated, verified, or the worst case is when they assume. And that, unfortunately, when you assume, that is the mother of all screw ups. So don't assume, do check, verify, validate. Get experts from the field, such as people like Pascal, to overview and look at the results to make sure that they are credible. So that's just a take I've seen in 20 years in working in academia and lecturing in simulation projects and simulation courses.
Thanks, Lawrence, for your comment. And also the next question goes directly to you. So we mentioned before practice and equipment. And so you have successfully implemented automated guided vehicles and automated yard gantry cranes, so RTGs. In hindsight, what would you have done differently, and what would you do again?
With the work, I think the success has been working with partners. The companies we were working with, we had good communication, working with the OEMs, and then as always, having the end users involved with the projects, because after all, it's the end user that will be paying for the solution. So overall, looking back, I would say for the experiences I've seen, it was the meetings, having everything documented, because sometimes in some projects, what was discussed would not be documented, or there would be a change and that was not clearly communicated to the other party, and then there would be a delay, and then when that would happen, fingers would start pointing. So clearly good project management communication is so important, because after all, this is a project.
Right, thank you. So does it make automation projects more complex when multiple equipment is automated at the same time, like, for example, horizontal and for vertical transport? So, and what are possible turning points at which such a project can fail? So what is your take, Nils?
Of course. I mean, yeah, if you're automating different systems at the same time, it makes it more complex. But to what extent? I think it's not growing linearly, and it's also not over proportional, rather under proportional, the complexity growth, I would say. For example, in your case, with the AGVs and the automated stacking cranes. If you have the ASCs that are doing the handover, and you have to think about the processes that have to be designed fail-safe, whether it's a terminal tractor or an AGV, you basically have to do the same considerations. Yes, there come other thoughts on top when you have to think about it from the AGV side, but really it's not, the complexity is not growing over proportionally here. So therefore, and that's also what we see specifically for the greenfield terminals, there we are doing everything at the same time. It has been proven that it works. With the, we have the terminals at the Maasvlakte in Rotterdam, which have not only ASCs, AGVs, also remote controlled key cranes and other smaller aspects that have been automated. Similarly with the VICT a couple of years ago in Australia, Melbourne. So that's all proven. The story is a bit different, I would say, for brownfield terminals. For risk mitigation, there I would rather go for a step-by-step approach because you do not want to risk or that your whole operation is spoiled or the whole terminal breaks, basically, just because you're making too big of a step at the same time. And I think Pascal also can comment on that. What's his take on that from an operator perspective?
Yeah, please, Pascal.
Absolutely, Nils. No debate on the green field. There you kind of have to do it, but also you have a green playing field, quite literally. I'm working mostly in brownfield automation and never touch both sides of the interface at the same time. You end up in a moving target situation. Yes, it might take a little longer on paper if you do it sequentially, but in reality you will get there quicker because it is a complexity and also. When you look there, and we have mentioned a couple of times today, think about who's your integrator. Is it my OEMs on both sides who are supposed to integrate with each other? Do I have a third-party integrator? Do I have the resources and means to do it myself? Some of the larger operators might do that themselves. For some of the smaller ones, they might want to partner up with a third party rather than the OEMs. But if you can, don't touch both sides of the interface at the same time.
Pascal, good advice. So we are already quite advanced in our time. So let's look into the chat, which questions we have not yet answered. One question here is there any threshold level in terms of labor cost above which automation makes sense for a port in general? And if it is cheaper, then the threshold manual mode is more economical. So maybe Nils, would you like to answer?
Frankly speaking, I don't have a US dollar value in mind, like so and so many US dollars per hour. What I can say is that from many studies, that the differences, even for greenfield terminals, are often very, very small in the profitability, whether you go for high level of automation or if you go for a standard RTG terminal tractor approach. Because you have the huge upfront investment versus higher operating cost at the end. And then it often turns down to small single-digit percentage values in the profitability. And we're talking about hundreds of millions. And then you're basing a lot of decisions on, and as Lawrence rightfully said, on assumptions, simulations, which is an art, as he said. What I can say from the experience is that even for high labor cost countries, such as in Europe or Australia, the US, it's often borderline to go for automation, specifically for smaller terminals. And smaller, I mean in this context, for terminals below 1 million TEU already. It can be it's a risky undertaking, and that means for any low labor cost countries in Africa, Asia, South America, it can be it's hardly justifiable from a purely financial perspective.
Okay, thank you very much, Nils. Now, a question to Lawrence. How do you see the challenge of cybersecurity with growing automation in ports?
It's getting more and more difficult with all the attacks Also, we've seen some very sophisticated attacks on shipping, maritime, because frankly speaking, we have not, as an industry, put in secure protocols. Vessels have been able to be manipulated in court during a course, so changing the route. Also, we've seen the situation in a number of terminals where criminals were able to pull out containers, so illegally, of course. So, regarding with cybersecurity, this is an ongoing battle. It's basically more like an arms race. There are white hats. There are various groups working to combat with the hackers, and of course criminals. They are doing some very suspicious or rather devious methods in trying to penetrate systems, terminals, operators around the world. So the question should be for operators and port authorities. It's not a question of if, it's when you will be attacked. You will be attacked, so you will have to be prepared. You will have to back up your data, your IT, and just be prepared for that and try to mitigate those attacks. So this is what I've seen over the course of the last few years, and especially, and I think another topic is that with TOS, the terminal operating systems and the IT systems, we didn't really address that in the last hour. Unfortunately, those TOS and IT systems are also susceptible to being attacked if steps are not taken in by the IT security, working with the individuals to ensure that they're using proper standards, such as example, changing passwords, using encryption, and so forth in their day-to-day tasks.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. And then we have a question for Pascal here. So how often do you reparameterize the automation system to improve productivity?
Daily. That is a daily tactical task. I mean, if I talk about the optimization parameters, most of them are still static parameters. So of course, if I go to heuristics and AI decision making, we've been trying out a little bit the stacking decisions by AI. But if I talk about the optimization criteria for my AGV fleet also, that's a tactical tool that my control room people use every day. And of course, the larger parameters are harder to change. But if it comes to really optimization, then this should be done really on a daily basis. Which all the more important, as Nils said, to retain the knowledge from the implementation phase within your organization, to really truly understand how your own system works, not reverse engineer that when the implementation people are gone.
Thank you very much. So we have one question to Nils. We talked already about skill level and labor cost issues. So how will port automation impact the workforce, and what measures can be taken to mitigate potential job losses and ensure the smooth transition to new roles at the same time?
Obviously a critical question that's always coming up when it's talked about automation, specifically for brownfield projects. And you rightfully said it, and I also said it earlier, it's always about cost saving. So, and that's what the terminal operator is ultimately interested. So basically he's interested in either doing the same volume as before with a reduced workforce, or doing more volume with the same workforce. And luckily, most of the automation projects that I've been involved in, when I'm talking about automation, I mean like ASCs, AGVs, stuff, so really the robotized automation, that typically comes along with some capacity increase. So in these cases, we were not talking about reductions in workforce, but still, we definitely have to talk about requalification, upskilling the people, because the profile will change significantly. But an operator can become a remote operator. Some people can become supervisor, planners, or even totally different positions that haven't been there before we started the automation project. Does that always work? Will that always work for everyone? No, but on average there is a lot of potential also for keeping a lot of your workforce, upskilling them and bringing them to new positions, definitely.
Thank you. So qualification is key, I would say. So today we have heard a lot about the challenges of terminal automation, but we also see that new technologies are spreading. Now, I would like to ask each of our guests to give us some quick final thoughts on whether we will see more automation in the future, be it in the number of terminals or of equipment or the type of processes. So let's start with Pascal.
Fully automated terminals, I think the number of candidates in the world is limited for the reasons that we have heard. Terminals with at least partial automation of processes, I think yes, because the cost pressure and the shortages in labor both are going to force our industry to focus more on efficiency in the future. The years of rapid growth are gone in most regions of the world, so the revenues are somewhat limited. So my take is yes, at least partially automated terminals we will see more in the coming years.
Also something about processes?
You mean which processes we will likely see? Yes, that's the ones we have been tackling today so far. So mixed horizontal transport, I think the time is ripe because the technology is getting there now, and that will come to our industry as well. And then I think we will talk a lot about OCR technologies in rail and quayside. Gate is a commodity, rail and quayside not so far distributed yet, but the gains are pretty easy to achieve. So horizontal transport and mixed traffic and OCR is, I think, the focus.
Thanks, Pascal. Lawrence, what's your take? Quick summary.
In summary, I feel that automation, we'll see this being scalable for small, medium-sized ports and terminals. Also, we keep talking about container terminals. There's also the opportunity for multi-purpose terminals to use some of the technologies that have been deployed. And I feel in the future, we'll see more and more the equipment vendors working together with the IT vendors, where we have smart solutions, where the communication integration is hopefully already packed in, where we don't have to spend, as Pascal was saying, time in trying to find third-party integrators and spending money on this. So it'd be nice to have standards put in place so it's scalable and modular when we employ these type of solutions for ports and terminals globally.
Thank you, Lawrence. Quite interesting aspect to think beyond container terminals. So, Nils, what is your final summary?
What's left for me? I think the autonomous truck will be a game changer once this is really plug and play available, which I expect in the next 5 to 10 years, considering the huge research budget that's provided by the big automotive companies here. And this will enable a lot of things for terminals. We will see more automation being affordable for small to mid-sized terminals. They can go for a stepwise automation, actually. Before, if you wanted to automate your horizontal transport, you needed to convert everything, tear down your whole yard, turn the yard by 90 degrees to have the perpendicular setup, etc. So now you can have mixed traffic. You can operate a couple of trucks automated and the rest with terminal tractors still. That will be possible. And also saying, as I just mentioned before, currently all the fully automated terminals are perpendicular, the perpendicular setup, which is awful from a logistics perspective, and I don't go into detail here, but with the autonomous trucks that's no longer needed, we will likely go parallel again for the fully automated terminals also in the future.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Nils. And thanks to all of you for your valuable inputs. We appreciate very much that you were available as our guests today. So if we have not answered any questions you around the world may have, please send an email to marketing@HPC Hamburg, and we will try to answer all your questions afterwards. This session has been recorded and will be made available shortly via our website www.hamburgportconsulting.com. Our next session of Connecting Ports will continue debating what matters, focusing on terminal automation, data analytics, and artificial intelligence. Please join us again on the 5th of July and have a regular look on our website for more details to come. Thank you very much for being with us today, and we hope you enjoyed the show. And a big thanks also to the team of Port of Hamburg Marketing, who provided the studio facilities and the technical support. And last but not least, for today, we say bye-bye, tschüss from Hamburg, and happy Easter to everybody. Thank you.
Bye.